You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Hey, glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler
and Nuria Corby.
And what are we talking about today, Nuria?
Today is another great topic, and it's social media for authors. I get lots of questions about that one. Do you?
I do. And not only do I get a lot of questions, I think a lot of the confusion that people have are because there's so much conflicting information out there. You know, just like with anything, everybody has their own opinion, and we're all masters of our own opinion.
Absolutely. Definitely. That's so true. And also because there isn't really much information about social media for authors specifically. So we're all kind of walking in the dark a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think there are a few things that I can suggest that people are not doing, or some of the things they're doing wrong. For example, when I notice that when people are first starting out in the KDP world, whether it's low content books or fictions or non-fiction, they tend to promote their books on their private, personal social media accounts. And that is a big mistake. You really do need to have a social media account purely for your books. And right. I would go even further than that and say purely for each pen name, if you
Agreed.
are writing under different pen names. Yeah, I can see you're agreeing to that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. We've talked about before. I mean, it's great to have your friends and family buy your books, but what that ends up doing, if they're not your target audience, that ends up confusing the Amazon algorithm and other marketplaces algorithm as well, and ends up hindering your potential for your book sales long term. And so, yeah, having a distinct page or account for your author name, or author names if you're having different pen names, is absolutely the right way to go. And I do agree that having a separate one for each pen name. And when you're first starting out, I mean, if you've got multiple pen names, don't overwhelm yourself. Just start with one. Which one's going to be your number one, your key, and use that as like a starting off point.
Definitely. And I think we could apply that to any business. If you've got a small business, you're running an Etsy shop, or whatever it is, never advertise to your friends and family, or never promote to your friends and family, because they're not your customers. They might buy one thing from you to help you, but after that, you really don't want to. And also, it's probably quite annoying for them if you try and sell to them, and it's not going to help you. You need to look at it as your product or your business being a brand, and the only way you can do that is to create a separate account for that brand, and it's just more professional as well. Because I think that if you're promoting things on your personal Facebook page or whatever, you're probably also putting personal things on there, and the two just don't mix. I think you have to really separate your business from your private life, definitely on social media. And social media can be scary as well, because it is a lot of work. Like you said, it can be overwhelming. If you think of promoting all of your pen names, all of your books, it's too much. I would say take little baby steps. Just try one first, like you said, and then take it from there. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if I know your friends and family, they probably want to help, and they can still help by sharing that page or sharing that account, and that way they're still helping without messing with the algorithm, without confusing social media or whatever. And this way they don't get inundated by feeling like they have to keep helping. No, they can just share it when they on their page, or if they know somebody that might be interested, they can share it with them, and that's it. And keep those separate. And similarly, and this happens to me all the time, is you want to keep it separate. And if people that follow that page, that author page or whatever, they start sending you friend requests on your personal account, again, you want to keep those separate.
Yeah.
You want to keep your customers and your friends and family separate. And so I learned that the hard way. So, if you want to take something from a past experience of me, keep those separate. So I have people that, that try to send me a friend request on Facebook on my personal page. I just don't accept those, unless it's somebody I know, then they're not a friend or family, so they shouldn't be on it. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
That is absolutely the right thing to do. And I know it's tempting, when you've got, some people have thousands of friends. I mean, I don't have that many, but I do realize that some people have a lot of friends, and it just seems the logical thing to do, to promote what you're doing to your friends. And I think, it does help in some way at first when everybody says, oh yeah, that's great, and I might buy your book, or whatever happens, whatever engagement you get is encouraging at first, but it's not sustainable on your own personal social media page. And like you said, there are other things that just interfere. It's just not professional. It's not something you can sustain. It's not something you can grow, because what are you growing then? Are you growing your personal friend list, or are you growing your customer base? So the two need to be definitely separate. And it's not too difficult to do. I mean, you can open a social media account for a pen name. And then the question is obviously, which platform do you choose, and how many platforms do you choose? So personally, going from my experience for books, I find that the visual platforms are better. So that's like Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Twitter is slightly less visual. Twitter is more sort of like a quick way of getting out a message. I don't feel it works that well on books, but they do have these events that sometimes go on, like I can't remember the hashtag now, but they've got these different hashtags where you can have a conversation on a certain day, at a certain time, and they all promote each other's books. So there is all that, but I didn't find it particularly helpful for my books. So I found the ones that are more visual, like Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. I found them better for me, but I think, again, that depends on the kind of books that you have, and you have to experiment. What did you find? Do you find the same thing?
Well, I do. I think it really comes down to, and we've talked about this before, is knowing your audience. Where are they at? If you're doing children's books, many times if it's something aimed towards females, then a place like Pinterest, which is, the last time I read, it was like 75% of the audience is female. Well, then it makes sense to be there, whereas if your book is more technical in nature, or more quote masculine in nature, that kind of thing, then you might want to try something like Reddit as as a place to have your account. One thing I did want to talk about when it comes to accounts, like when we were talking about Facebook, is not only can you like confuse your audience if you use your personal page or whatever, but also many, if not all, of the platforms have a business page, and that algorithm is different. And so again, you're going to confuse that algorithm if if it's a business page, but you're treating it like a personal page, or vice versa. It's not going to give you the visibility that you really want for your business unless you create a business page and treat it like a business.
And there are certain bonuses to that as well, aren't there?
Absolutely.
I think Instagram have got a function now where you can buy, from directly through Instagram, and Facebook has the same, of course. So,
and getting to what you were saying about, we were talking about the different platforms. I would say pick because I know one of the myths that are out there that people talk about when it comes to social media for authors is your customers are everywhere, so be everywhere. If you've got that kind of time, if you have that passion for social media, or you have a social media, marketing, person to do it for you, then go for it. But if that's not the case, if it's just you and you don't really like social media, I would say, just like you said, start with one platform, one that your audience is at and that you're the most comfortable with.
Yeah. And another tip to kind of make it easier on yourself, because posting regularly is really important, and it's like a full-time job, posting on social media. So the one thing that really helped me is to use a scheduling tool. So I know Canva have got one, but the one that I use is called Later, and it's amazing. It's a really good tool because you can post on different platforms at the same time, and the tool actually sort of sizes your images to the different platforms. They all have different image requests, so it will make Pinterest pins longer. It will make Facebook posts to the Facebook requirements, and you can basically schedule a month's worth, or however long you want, of your posts, and then it will just automatically post it to your platform. And I found that really, really helpful, because you can just dedicate a whole day to your social media and then you can forget about it. And obviously, if there's something that's time focused, something that you need to bring out at a certain time, or something new that has come out and you want to post about it, then you can manually post as well. But scheduling it has really improved sort of the way I schedule my time for social media, because it can really be a big beast, social media. It can really take the whole day sometimes if you're not careful. So yeah, and that way you avoid looking at social media as well, which can, you go down a rabbit hole. Before you know it, you've looked at 10 cat videos or whatever. So it's good to schedule it and organize it so that, you're really productive then. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing I've found when it comes to social media is don't always talk about you. Don't always be salesy. Don't always talk about you. Make sure, just like with anything with business, make sure that you're giving quality content. So I mean, they're following you for a reason. They're looking at your page for a reason. Obviously, your end goal is to sell, but you're really selling yourself. Because if they follow you long term, then they can buy from you multiple times, as opposed to, they find your page, they click on, they buy it one time. And so you really want to make sure that the people feel obligated to follow you, because they want to continue to get what you're sharing. And if all you're sharing is buy my book, then they're really not going to feel that invested into it.
Absolutely. That is such an important point. And that is the secret really to good social media promotion, is to not promote, to not sell things to people. I've seen that so often where people have opened a business account or an account for their books, and the first thing that they posted was a link to their book. And that's not how you start. You don't mention your books at all to begin with. You mention things that could be of interest to your audience. And that could be anything. That could be funny memes. That could be things that make people laugh, if that's how you want to attract people, or interesting facts that will sort of speak to your audience. It really depends on your audience as well. And then once you've got a good amount of people following you, then you kind of give them something of value that they can use, that's free, that will help them in some way. And then you increase that. And then after you've done that, that's when you then mention, oh, by the way, I've got this book, So I would say that you do a lot of promoting that doesn't look like promoting.
Mm-hmm.
That's just making friends or making people like to come to your site, because like you said, you're the product as well. It's not just your books, but you are the product. Your whole persona, your whole social media presence is the product as well. And if you're just selling to people and just talking about your books, they won't really follow you. There has to be something in it for them. There has to be something. And I mean, we do that as well as consumers. We tend to follow people that give us value, so it's the same when we want to be the people providing the value. We do have to provide that value and make sure that it's worth it for them. And there's so many things you could do, because sometimes people find it hard to think of, well, what do I post about? What do I tell people? But there's so many things you could post about, depending on what kind of books you write.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like if you're doing, and it's not going to be the same depending on what your audience is, if your audience, if you mainly write nonfiction books, and they're technical in nature, then that's then doing something like fun facts or things like that. That's the kind of thing that would interest that audience, whereas if you write children's books, then you're going to be sharing things that are more, related to children and things that, that are obviously family friendly and things like that. And so you definitely want to keep your audience, front of mind at all times. And remember that majority of the time, you're probably going to create, your account saying, John Doe author or whatever. And so they already know you're an author. They already know you have books. They know that by the name of your page or whatever. So you don't need to push your books that much, because they already know by your name that you're an author. And if you're sharing enough of the other stuff that interests them and that they feel like they can trust you, because it's all about know, like, and trust, right? And so if they feel like they can trust you, they'll find your books. I mean, you can have links to your books in, link in the bio or whatever, depending on the platform you're on, but you don't need to be like bombarding them with it. It shouldn't be a post. You can share snippets of your book, and then let them take it from there. But again, it's really about getting that audience and giving them way more than they've asked for, way more than they can expect. And then they feel that reciprocity. They feel like they need to reciprocate by doing something for you, like following or buying your book or whatever.
Yeah, that is the whole secret, really, to being successful with social media promotion. It's about giving value, but it's also sometimes it's entertainment. Sometimes I know I follow one author who I can't remember what kind of books she writes. I think they're novels. And her whole Facebook page is like memes, and they're funny. And I love looking at them because they always make me laugh. And just thinking about it makes me laugh now. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy being in that. It's not a group, it's a page. I enjoy reading the page. And now and again, very now and again, she'll promote one of her books. And you don't mind then, because you've had a lot of enjoyment from that page. So I think it's really, really important. And also it depends on what your books are. Because if you think of, I don't know, if you have a non-fiction book that educates people about something, you could post educational posts about whatever the book is about, and you're not giving anything away from the book, but you're just giving people a glimpse of what else there is, and it might make them think, wow, I didn't know that, what that book sounds interesting, there might be more like that in there, so there was one very clever one, I can't remember what it was called, so maybe it wasn't that clever. I should have remembered the name, but it was a book on something like 1,000 little known facts or something like that. And then every time they posted something on Facebook, it was a little known fact. And very often I read it and I thought, oh, wow, I didn't know that. and the more you read it, the more you wanted to know what other facts are
Right.
there that I don't know about, so then he hits us with that book. And then you're more tempted to buy it. So there's so many ways you can create your posts on social media. And if you're writing novels or romantic novels or whatever, you can describe a character, and draw people in that way and say, I want to know more about that character, what happened to them. Buy my book, that explains more. So there's so many ways of doing that. And I think social media is great for any book. It doesn't matter what book it is. There's always something you can say about your book or your books. Can even just be about one book. One book is there's one that I follow that has some really beautiful poems, and she does it differently to what we just said. She actually posts her poems. Every post is one of her poems, but they're so lovely and so beautiful. You just want to buy the book because you want them all in one place together.
Right.
So there's different ways. Yeah, there's different ways of doing it, but it's a really good opportunity. Social media is a really good way of promoting your books for free as well.
Yeah. And one thing that we kind of touch base on, but I mean, it's super helpful, especially when you have the audience, when it comes to book launches, and leading up to book launches, because you can, again, I feel that it really comes down to not only giving value, but also having them feel like they're part of the decision-making process, like book reveals, not just revealing the book cover, but maybe having 4 different options and having them vote on which one they like the best, even if you already know which one you're going to go with, but having them vote on theirs, and then you don't even tell them who the winner is. And then later on you do a cover reveal, and then more people are going to be interested in the cover reveal because now they have that vested interest. I voted, I wonder if mine's the one that won or whatever. And but even going back to, hey, I'm just decided I'm going to start writing a book about this, that, and the other thing, and having them follow along with you, share little snippets, get people's ideas on, naming your characters, whatever. Again, making them feel like they're part of that.
That's a good point as well. It's feeling part of a community almost, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
Yeah, and that's very important, because it has to be a two-way street, otherwise it's just very one-sided. You're presenting something, buy this, people don't care, but if they're involved in it, like you said, that's a perfect example. People like to be involved as well, and they feel they're part of that story. Storytelling is another really good way of promoting things on social media, and that was a perfect example, what you just said, that feeling part of the community is your story. It involves you, so it's part of your story as well. But there's so many ways, I'm trying to think of stories that you could tell, but you know what I mean, that there's a storytelling element in posting on social media.
Right. And you also want, especially, social media, they've got algorithms, and the more you're providing content for your users, the more chances that they're not going to just see that you put something new up, take a look at it, and go to somewhere else. They're going to stay on your page. They're going to scroll down. They're going to see what else they missed, and again, keeping them engaged and like you said, making them feel like it's a community, I've heard so many people refer to their followers as their tribe, or many times, and I do this on my channel, is I've got nicknames for them. My followers are writers, and so I have people,
I'm a writer.
you are, or a home boss or whatever. And so I, and people will email me, and they'll say, they'll reference that, hey, I'm a writer or whatever. And so they really do feel like part of a community, part of a group. And that's, we're all social creatures, and so that we all have that drive to feel belonging and to feel like we're connected. And so if you can make your audience feel that way, that's the difference between a potential buyer and a potential repeat buyer, and those real loyal fans that that will buy your book on pre-order, even though it's not going to come out for 3 more months. And, and that will come to all of your, book signings or, whatever you offer, they're there. And even if they're not interested in it or they can't afford it or whatever, they're also the ones that are sharing it with other people in other groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the beauty of it. And I think, that community aspect is part of that. It kind of makes people want to share things. But the other thing that is also really important, again, we mentioned it already, is providing value, so that the people who consume your information feel that it's valuable to somebody else, and then they share that as well. And that brings it back to you and your book and your platform. So it really is about providing value, providing something that helps other people. And even if you're writing romantic novels, it can help other people, whatever. You could even, as a writer, you probably also have other writers as an audience, and you could provide them with valuable information, like, I don't know, maybe like a checklist on how to develop your character, or I don't know, something, how you create a world or a scene, so you can also target people like you who are writing, but you can also target people who are consuming your book, and not target them as writers. But there are just so many parts of your audience that you can target with different things as well. So it gets quite technical at some point, but it's actually quite easy. It's providing something of value to whoever sees your post, and then that's where the promotion then starts later on, when you're actually promoting. Even though providing that value is part of promoting, it's not the actual sales pitch. The sales pitch isn't that important in the great scheme of things. It's obviously important to have a good sales pitch, but I think for me, it comes right at the end of the list, probably. All the other stuff comes first and is more important to me.
Yeah, when it comes to social media, that is when I do the least amount of call to actions. I let the content that I put out there be my call to action. And I know, we've kind of gone through a lot of stuff, and like you said, and get real technical, and I know it can get overwhelming. But one of the two biggest things I would recommend, as like a takeaway from me at least, is one, pick 1 or 2 platforms that your audience is at and that you're comfortable, publishing on. Now, you might not be comfortable publishing on any of them, and I would say, get comfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable to begin with. But the other thing is, and this is just as important, if not more important, is consistency. You need to be putting out consistent posts or whatever. And when I say consistent, whatever that means to you, if that means, a post a week, that's fine. If that means a post a day, that's fine. Because I know a lot of people, they look at Twitter and people are posting, 10, 12 times a day, and they're like, I can't do that. I'd be on my phone all the time. I completely understand. I'm the same way. The important thing is that your audience gets used to whatever your cadence is. And so if you are sporadic, then there's a lot less chance that they're going to, be able to catch your content, because they don't know when it's going to happen. But,
Absolutely.
like with my YouTube channel, I post videos on Wednesdays, and I used to post them multiple times a week, and I just couldn't keep up with that. So I stuck to just Wednesdays. And now if I'm at a certain time, and if it's late, I get people messaging me, are we getting a video this week? And so, again, your followers will get used to whatever your cadence is. So don't feel like you have to go, crazy and do multiple a day or a week, unless that's what you feel comfortable with. But it really comes down to whatever you think is sustainable for you and your lifestyle.
That is a perfect way to put it, because it really has to fit in with your life as well. It's really important not to be overwhelmed, because it has to feel comfortable and it has to feel natural for you to do that. And like I said, I mean, scheduling tools can help. But as far as frequency is concerned, how many posts or how many times should you post? It's like what you said, consistency is more important than frequency, probably. So, I mean, I've experimented with this, and it depends on the platforms as well. Some platforms you have to publish several times a day, like, for example, Twitter. And the reason for that is because the feeds get lost, as the day goes on. There's so many more feeds that have come in. Yours is nowhere to be seen. So you have to keep tweeting. It's called something different now, obviously, but it's still Twitter in my eyes. But there are other platforms where if you post once a week, it's great because it's still there. Your feed, your post will still come up. Facebook is quite good with that. Instagram, I found you have to do it sometimes more frequently, and I've now come to a point where I do one a day, so, and that's on several platforms all the same, because it's just easier to schedule them all one a day, and then it goes out to all the platforms. But you could just pick one platform and it's equally good. If you pick a platform that really works for you, that is worth more than having 4 platforms that only work half-heartedly. So I would say one platform is enough if you don't want to do any more than that. And then it just depends on how many times feels comfortable for you, and if that's once a week, that's once a week. Just experiment, just try different things. And sometimes you find that it's not necessary to post that often. And with other types of books, it's better to do more often, to post more often. So it just depends. There is a bit of experimentation, and you have to just find your level. But everything is possible. You don't have to post 3 times a day. That's not the case. Right. And you don't have to post on all platforms. So it's just about being consistent and about being selective as well. Which one is the best for you. That's, in my opinion, there might be other ways of doing it, but so far that's worked for me.
Well, this has been another great mastermind, Nuria. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.